Welcome to another episode of Not For Nothing. This is my last day in Georgia, and I'm reconnecting with a good friend that I did actually see last year while Tom Strom and Jackie Sandylands and I were down in Georgia, and you and your lovely wife, Sky, made an effort to come see us, and we actually got to hang out with you, which was super cool. But I'm going to have you introduce yourself real quick and let people know who you are.
Craig Foster, been tattooing since 1995. I've always been in this area, so the Atlanta metro area, working with a local named Miami, Dino Cook, Cap Sumsky, before I broke off and started my own studio, Skinworks Tattoo. And now I have a quiet, cozy studio named the Gilded Cardinal in Carrollton, Georgia.
And you opened up, well, when did you work for, the first person you worked for was Miami.
Yeah, so he's the one that brought me into the industry in 1995.
That was 95?
Yeah, 95.
And how long would you work with him?
About a year. Basically, Miami was probably one of the younger tattoo artists in this area back in 95. Like, there weren't a lot of younger tattoo artists in 95.
Right.
There's a lot of the older guys that hold the keys to that kind of thing. So I think Miami dealt with a lot of dealing with the controlling of apprenticeships where these guys wouldn't agree to teach him.
Right.
So I really think that Miami was definitely kind of self-taught, but he was gifted at art, so he was really good at tattooing. So when he brought me into it, I think Miami had already been tattooing like 3 to 4 years, and Miami's who did like one of my first tattoos in 1992, right when I turned 21. So Miami was my introduction into this industry, because I remember being attracted to his lifestyle as a tattoo artist.
Now, how did you actually meet Miami? Like, did you know him from a situation? Like, did you know him just from tattooing, or did you just go into the shop because it was a shop that you could get tattooed in? Or?
So in 1990, I was kind of new here to Georgia. I had moved to Georgia with my mother in '89 from South Florida. So we lived in Boca Raton. And so when I came here, I had a disconnect to Georgia. Like, I definitely did not like it here very much.
I know.
I wanted to be back in Florida. And so shortly after my arrival here, I learned of another new arrival in Marietta, close to where I was, and there was a guy named Miami.
Okay.
And he was strangely enough, in Miami.
Oh, okay. Well, that actually makes sense, considering his name was
from Miami.
Miami.
So
unless he was like a Miami Vice fan.
He was like he looked like a Vanilla Ice kind of clone back then. He definitely had some flavor to himself. The story is, I had gotten in trouble. First time I'd ever been in trouble, and I had first offenders treatment. But part of that first offenders treatment, I had to turn myself into the Cobb County Police Station in Marietta.
Oh shit!
And get booked and fingerprinted, but I wasn't being incarcerated. I literally just had to go there to get put into the system. And so when I arrived there, they were doing my fingerprints, and I guess they got a call in that they were bringing a dangerous person into the station, and I legally could not be in an open area with him because I wasn't incarcerated.
Okay.
So basically they asked my permission, like, can we put you in a cell while we process this guy? He's gonna be really fucking dangerous, and we legally cannot have you in the same room as him. So can we put you in a cell while we process this guy? I'm like, yeah, it's cool.
That's kind of fucked
They locked me in a thing, but I'm not getting locked up. Like, I'm just temporary.
No, I know, but still, like, that can be a real traumatic thing with someone for
Miami is who they brought in.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, so I'd already heard about this guy. Like, I'd heard rumors that there was a guy from Miami that was, like, there's another guy from Florida in town, and I was just very intrigued to meet this guy. So this guy comes walking in. I remember he had this haircut. It was like a palm tree in the back of his head with coconuts, and then it said Miami in graffiti across the back of his head.
Cut into his head?
Oh, yeah, it was like tattooed? A haircut. No, it was cut. Like, it was like a haircut that had Miami.
Like
it was like a high top. Oh, it was a high top, fucking bleached blonde on the top. And all the cops were like talking shit about him. But, you know, I just heard like there's this dangerous guy, and I literally see Miami. We didn't get to talk because I was never like, we were never in the same room, but I could see him. And then weeks later, I'm at a party, and Miami's here at the party. And so I walk up to him, like, did you get arrested like a couple weeks ago? And he's like, I saw you in the holding cell. And then me and him just clicked, and it was like a summer that me and Miami were like best friends for a full summer. And at the end of that summer, he got arrested for something. Probably not talk about why he got arrested, but he got arrested.
I was gonna say you may not want to.
Yeah, he got arrested, and he was gone for a full summer. Like no one saw him for a year, and when he came back home, he was a tattoo artist. I remember that quickly. I got my first tattoo by him, and then I got my second tattoo by him, and then we lost track of each other. So when I got to the point where I decided that I was going to be a tattoo artist, I was tattooing out of my house, tattooing friends,
just picking
friends,
up your own shit and going for it.
You know, I definitely had a lot of difficulty going in. I mean, majority of tattoo studios in Georgia were definitely run by bikers.
So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, like when we were, so I've been here since like 12:30, that I got here earlier, and it's later in the afternoon now. And like every other podcast I've ever done, when I get to hang out with people, it turns into the conversation before is always like what people really probably want to hear versus not, you know?
Right.
And it's one of those things where, like, we talked about some crazier shit earlier, but you were saying like a lot of tattooers were hesitant to take on a black apprentice, and that you were usually steered towards other black-run businesses.
I mean, you could honestly, like, in 1995, I mean, I could name the amount of black tattoo artists that I was even aware of in the United States. There weren't really many. James Conklin.
Right.
Conklin, Jackie Gresham, she's like in the Louisiana area.
Right.
Even the Atlanta area, we had Maya Bailey, Lord Yada. So it was just like a really small handful of known African American artists in the industry. So if you walked into a white shop and asked about an apprenticeship,
9 times out of 10
they would direct you to go towards
to a different shop.
Yeah, like go to where, you know, like there's Judy who started West End Tattoo in Atlanta. She was known to be one of the only artists that would even train an African American tattoo artist. So we're very limited.
Right.
And I understood that just, I think the first 2 weeks of trying to find placement in a studio, which now in hindsight, I think it was a lot easier back then to just assume it was because of my color why people weren't giving me a job. But
Good
now,
point.
As a studio owner, I mean, I'm giving the advice all the time. Like, people try this very impersonal approach to asking for an apprenticeship. So it's like a person, you have no idea who they are, never seen them before, never seen their work before, they've never had you tattoo them before, and they're literally calling up a tattoo studio. The question is, are you guys looking for an apprenticeship? And always my answer is always going to be, fucking no, not like that.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, and some days less patience, and that's where I leave the answer at. Other days where I do have patience, I try to give advice to help them out and tell them, like, you know, it's the 2 people that I have trained in this industry, they were people that I had probably been tattooing over a year, and I personally knew these people before they even approached me about asking about a job. And honestly, the fact that I personally knew these people was probably the only reason why I chose to teach them.
You know, it's funny, and that's something I've often said, like, you can't assume that just cold calling a shop and them saying yes, and never having met you, not knowing who you are personally, not knowing whether or not you're going to gel with them, or you're going to gel with, or you're going to be able to gel with them and the other guys in the shop. That's a huge risk to take. And if anybody's going to take you in cold like that, I think they've got very curious reasons why. And 9 times out of 10 it's probably going to be because of money and
I've worked for people. I've worked for, you know, Dino Cook, and I remember, like, when I feel like my experience working with him, and he's one of those guys that was way ahead of his time when he came onto the scene. He was young, very ambitious, competed unbelievably a lot, and gained respect like really quickly. But even working for someone like him, he paid taxes. We got paychecks. It was very different.
His shop was actually the very first shop. I remember people talking to me about how I run my business and how he ran his business. And their question was, do you pay your guys in a check? And I'm like, no. Like, why would you do that? Like, that's crazy. I mean, why would you want that much of a paper trail? And they were like, he was one of the first, literally, he was one of the first shops that I remember. Everybody was getting taxes taken out. You were getting paid in a check. None of it was under the table at all. But he also had a partner that wasn't a tattooer. And that was kind of the money end of things. And you know as well as I do, if you're not tattooing, you're not making money. You're not making money. You're not going to see the investment on that.
That guy would literally show up maybe once every 5 months. He would literally, he was a real shady fucking dude too.
Oh, for real?
Oh, he would come in the shop. He had like this IROC fucking car that was like all pimped out. He would pull up in front of the shop like I'm big shit because I own a tattoo shop. He wasn't a tattooer. And he would come and pick up his money and fucking go.
Yeah, no shit's
And we all knew, like we were told not to ask any questions about the guy or like
dude,
what he did.
That's kind of.
I remember it. It was like
fucked.
this weird, not talked about subject. This dude that used to come and pick up fucking cash all the time. And eventually, you know, Dino got to the point where he expanded. He had 3 studios. Each studio had a different investor. So it's like,
dude, talk about taking a huge chance on something like that. When you're taking on multiple partners, can you imagine if things aren't going 100%?
They never were. They never were.
I can imagine, yeah.
No, there was never a balance.
Yeah.
Like, if one studio was doing well, there were always 2 other studios that needed that studio to keep them floating.
Right.
And unfortunately, it was always the studio that I worked at because he was taking a lot of money to keep all these other businesses floating.
Right.
But, I mean, for me, even back then, just understanding, like, the balance of bringing in all these guys. Sometimes Dina would bring in guys that none of us fucking liked, which would affect our ability to fucking work. Like,
especially when you got to work with somebody you just fucking hate.
He would just throw people into the fucking mix and like, hey, this is a new guy, you know, and these guys would come in all fucking aggressive, like talking to your clients, you know, and.
Well, so how much does it burn your ass? Like when you're no longer looked at as like an individual at that point. You're looked at. And we were talking about this earlier with another Atlanta-based tattooer, Georgia-based tattooer, where you're literally nothing more than a cog in the wheel. And it's like there's really no interaction beyond, like there's no friendship, there's no, like you go into work, you fucking do your time, you put up with the people around you, and then you fuck off. Nobody's going out for drinks afterward or dinner afterwards, or there's no family aspect to it.
I mean, I feel like it just depends on where you come from, because I think coming from Miami studio, and this was just like a lawless studio. Like,
yeah.
I remember Miami telling me, like, we don't fucking pay taxes. I'm like, really, we don't? Like, no, we're tattoo artists, they don't taxes. Like, we don't have to pay fucking taxes. So the whole first year, I'm tax-free, like thinking like, this is the coolest fucking job, dude.
Like, I fucking like this.
Yeah, no restrictions, no nothing. Like, there wasn't even like tattoo licensing back then. You just had to have a regular business license to run a tattoo studio. And so Dino's mother used to work at a Publix near where I used to live, and I had befriended her. She was like the nicest. She was a cash register person, and she always treated me super nicely. And back then, that was something. If you had visible tattoos, like you really were aware when normal people treated you normal.
Right.
And she was abnormally super nice to me every time I came in. So I would go out of my way to get in her line, and eventually she had asked me if I did tattoos, and I'm like, yeah. And like, she's like, where do you work at? And I'm like, in Douglasville. And she had told me that her son's a tattoo artist. It happened to be Dino Cook, and I knew exactly who he was. I didn't know him, but I was like, yeah, I know exactly who he is. And she's like, well, you should go meet him. So within a couple of weeks, I made my way out to Dino. He lived in my town.
Right.
His studio was like really close to where I lived at, and talked to him. And like I said, Dino is probably at that time one of the most ambitious.
He came on the scene right after me, I think.
It was very close. Like,
it was great because I remember doing the Atlanta convention, and it's funny. My first in with him was, or getting to meet him. We both entered the contest at the end of the night in Atlanta. It was like Saturday night. We both entered the contest, And in Atlanta, you had the big lobby with the bar there and stuff. And I remember Dino walking up to me and just being like, "Man, you fucking did it. You fucking beat me, man. Good, good on you. You deserve it." And I remember being like, "Yeah, cool, whatever, dude. This is how you're gonna introduce yourself to me? Like, I don't really give a fuck. You want the trophy? Because I don't really give a fuck."
He was so competitive.
Yeah.
But he was just who he is. He's one of those people. You tell him he can't do something,
he's gonna do it.
His mind gets set to just proving you fucking wrong, and that's literally him in a nutshell. He was just a very ambitious guy.
And again, I guess there's something to be said for that. I mean, being an artist, you're always trying to create. You're trying to push your own boundaries and stuff. So I guess the competitive aspect of things does make sense. It's just, to me, it wasn't really about that.
I get it. I mean, but I just remember one of the first things he did, and there were two really important things for me that kind of reflect on this industry now. Dino told us, like, if you're trying to get a job there, that was the first thing he said, like, we do a payroll system. We're gonna take all your taxes out, we're gonna do everything. There's no control, nothing's going under the table, everything's fucking legal here.
And if
you want to work here.
This is the late 90s.
96.
Yeah,
like, you're gonna get a fucking payroll. It's gonna come from a payroll company, taxes gonna get taken out, but he's like, the thing is, at some point in time, you're gonna wanna buy a car, you're gonna wanna buy a house, and this is gonna help you establish that fucking credit. And I really feel like what he was doing back then was very unpopular in our trade.
Oh, yeah.
No, it was like, a lot of guys thought that was a fucking joke.
Yeah.
I mean, even meeting people outside of that studio, I mean, I felt like if we worked for Dino, all of the cool fucking tattoo artists were still lawless out there, kind of treated us like we were like the kids that went to private school, because we were over there like fucking paying taxes and good fucking citizens. But whatever. Like, Dino was ahead of his time.
I think what saved that from happening was anybody who wasn't going to like you or not like Dino wasn't going to like Dino no matter what.
Right.
You know what I mean? And a lot of it's based on jealousy, because Dino, like I said, he was taking the world by storm. He was doing tattoos that were not being done. Like, that uber realism stuff was, I mean, I want to say this is a couple of years before guys like DeVries and fucking Nico and all those guys. I mean, it's several years before
he was doing kind of like a new school realism kind of thing back then, which wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
But
I think that from the standpoint of a studio and the grand scheme of things, I think that's what helped people not hate him.
Right.
Because of the fact that it's like, well, dude, if he's doing it that way, let him do it that way. He's still doing great work, so who fucking cares? Like, he's becoming world famous, Well,
the other rule of going to Psycho to work for Dino, you weren't allowed to have a nickname.
That's weird.
We had to go by birth name, because that was his vision. Like, I feel like Dino back in '96, I feel like the main clients of tattooing were blue collar.
Yeah.
Everyone was blue collar. That was where our money came from.
Right.
And I think Dino envisioned a world where white collar people were going to be interested in getting tattooed. So
that's a good way of putting it, actually.
He really formed his business around that model. Like, he wanted to advertise working with people who were in a way different tax bracket than us. He envisioned people coming from other countries to get tattooed by him.
Right.
Like, this is a thing now. Like, this is.
Oh, now it's funny.
This is where tattooing is.
Yeah, for now. Like, I mean, that was probably like late '90s or mid to late '90s, where that became more prevalent. Where you had more people coming from overseas, different state, like jumping state lines. Like, I started tattooing Rodney Raines in like, shit, we talked about the other night, 97, 90, I think it was 97, 98. And he was one of the first clients that had come up from North Carolina, who came in from out of state to get tattooed by me when I was in New York. And that was, for me, it was an honor. It was really flattering to have somebody jump state, like drive 13 hours, stay for the night, and then get tattooed all the next day. That's never dealt with that before, That was kind of like the beginning of all that. And then when people started coming from other countries, that just blows your fucking mind,
I mean, I remember going to conventions for the first time. Dino was definitely the first person to open that door to me. I want to say when I first started working for Dino, within the first like month of working for him, I did my first convention, which was the Atlanta convention with Tony Olivas.
Right.
That was the first convention I'd ever done, which was in '96, which led to me doing the Richmond convention with Billy. Dino shared that with me. Started doing the Richmond convention.
Huge fucking hookups back then.
'97, I think, was my first year doing Richmond. And I remember, you know, going into a convention for the first time. Now you're seeing all these artists that I guess back then would be what would be considered trending, because these are artists that you only saw in magazines.
Yeah.
I remember Anil Gupta. Do you remember?
Yeah. Did he ever work that show?
No, he never worked it, but his work was fucking there, like all the time. Like there was this guy that I remember, there was a tattoo that he did. It was a monkey wearing a fruit basket.
Fucking don't remember that.
It was ages ago. Like it was like 97, 98, but it was like this hyper-realism monkey with a Victorian dress, and he had like this big fruit. It was like this tedious.
Oh,
like,
that was
super highly detailed tattoo.
That was Anil in a nutshell, dude.
Yeah,
It's
so
funny.
like,
he was like the beginning, and this is again mid to late '90s. He was the beginning of that weird hyper-realism
tattoo artist with no tattoos.
And yeah, exactly. You know, and dude, that was a big deal with a lot of artists.
It's still a big deal right now.
Yeah, no. Well, but look, there's more people with no tattoos.
There's more people that are allowed to do it now, but back then that was like fucked up.
Yeah, you don't do that. Like if you showed up at a convention, you didn't have any tattoos, someone was going to yell at you.
I want to say he dealt with so much shit for not having tattoos that he finally got tattooed by like, it was like 3 or 4 people tattooing him at once.
So he went, the first Tattoo the Earth by Paul Booth in Massachusetts. I don't remember who called him out. I wish I could remember who called him out, but basically they were like, the biggest names are at this show, you're getting tattooed.
It was never even heard of. Like no one ever done like a tattoo like that before.
So he basically got tattooed by Guy Aitchison, Paul Booth, Philip Blue, Jack Rudy. I think it was those 5. They did like
it's like the dream team of tattooing.
Yeah, they did like an Earth, Wind, and Fire kind of thing, and it was like, I think like Philip did the water, Paul did the rocks. I don't remember exactly, but dude, it was crazy.
No, I remember that. Really they shut everybody up. No one fucked with him ever again, but he's disappeared.
Yeah, well, he's still, I think he's in Queens now.
Oh, really?
It's funny because his name, again, just came up a bunch. And I think there's this resurgence of, because he has no real social media presence. He does have an Instagram, but I've looked at it and there's not much on it. You know what I mean? It's not like he's keeping up with the Instagram and the Joneses. He's just doing his thing. So I don't know. I don't know if he just doesn't care and he's got his own clientele. He always, because I remember when I got tattooed by him at Unimax, he did a piece on my upper arm back in '96. No, 90. Oh no, he tattooed me in '93, and it was his private studio because it was illegal in Manhattan still and in the boroughs. And but he had a couple of clients in and out and big stuff like full back pieces, but like. They had one guy, a big back piece with a giant cock and balls on his back, but it was made up of little people, like all people. It was a big, bald gay dude, like leather boy looking dude. And if I'm getting that screwed up, I apologize, but I'm pretty certain that's what he was. And he had all this huge back piece, and then he had like his thighs tattooed, and then Anil is just like, no, show him the real stuff, show him the goods. And I'm like, show him the goods, what the fuck? So the guy pulls his fucking, drops his drawers, and of course he's got no underwears on. He's got no fucking drawers underneath his drawers. And his whole cock is tattooed to look like a dragon's head and this dragon snout. And when you pull the foreskin back, because he was uncircumcised, it was a ball of flame on the head of his cock. And I'm like, cool, didn't need to see that. Didn't need to see that. Really, thank you. Like it was just, yeah. But again, I never, because I was more of the artist than I was tattooer in my first 6 months. And I really kind of gravitated towards that. He did everything with tight 3s. Like he colored my entire arm with like, I think a tight 3 and a fucking 7 round. And I mean a tight 7 round. And I'm like, I'd never seen that before. But I mean, the shit was in there. It took forever. I mean, it was tattooed like this big. Right. And for back then, I think a tattoo this big took him like 6 or 7 hours. And to me, coming from a street shop, that was like, that's a ridiculous amount of fucking time. But when I got this piece from Cap, I think this was like 6.5 hours as well. And
Right.
again, I was kind of like flabbergasted. I'd never sat for that long besides this up arm, but this was done in 2 sessions. Cap was 1 session that I drove down to Georgia for. And I don't think you were there. You were gone back.
I came to CAP. I was there 2002
So that was way before your
through
time.
2005.
So how long did you work for Dino? How long you were at
6
Dino's?
years. Yeah, 6 years. I think it just got to a point where he was expanding his business, and I feel like anybody, if you work for somebody long enough, you have hopes that the business will cater your needs.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes. Like you really feel like your needs are way more important than whoever owns the fucking business.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they're not catering to you, then I'm gonna go fucking somewhere else where I'm wanted.
Right.
But I just remember, I think I was still in the grass is always greener at the other studio that your friends work at kind of stage of my career.
That's totally understandable. I mean, you want to work amongst your friends. You don't necessarily
We just
want to...
hear about how cool this shoot studio
Yeah.
is over here and how
Yeah.
much they get paid and it's like busy all the fucking time, and you're sitting here at this shop like, oh man, like they're
like-
having such a party over there. And so
like-
Cap was that person that I met at conventions, and he was one of those guys that was like really friendly to me on the floor. He was like this jolly Santa Claus figure when I saw him at conventions.
He had a fucking laugh.
No, he had a
man.
presence. Yeah. He was like just this jolly,
Yeah.
happy fucking guy. And I remember when I made up my mind that that's the guy that I would leave this studio and I would go to a similar, just another great guy in Atlanta. There were only a few guys in Atlanta at that time that were like notable. And honestly, back then, if you even wanted to be at a convention, you had to work with one of these fucking guys.
It's one of the things we talked about. Is him, Tony Olivas, Dino Cook.
There was
yeah.
just a very small handful of guys, and if you weren't part of that crew, I mean, back then it was like Dino from Marietta, Tony Olivas, Cap, and then there were like Phil Colvin. You know,
Yeah.
he was running Memorial, so he had his whole squad. But
Yeah.
there was just a small convention circuit, and you had to work at one of these studios to work. And so that was the more difficulty was if you worked at one of those studios anymore, there were very few studios that you would even be willing to work at.
Right.
Because
You work for the best.
I mean, well, they did more for your career.
Yeah.
Working for these guys. And so Cap was that guy that I really felt like that he would have an impact on my career, which he honestly probably like one of the greatest impacts on my career, but he was probably the hardest
We talked
years
about
of my
that.
career.
Yeah, we talked about that, how it was a difficult, like, because he comes from a very old school way of thinking. He started in Southern California.
Hyper emotional person. He was either really fucking angry or really fucking happy. There was no gray area for him.
Yeah.
And it was up to us to determine when that was. If he was like angry guy, then we all kept our heads down and walked on glass.
You knew to avoid
Kept
him.
everyone stayed really fucking busy.
Yeah.
You would just keep your head down because the minute you looked like you weren't fucking doing something, Cap would get upset and find something. And you didn't want Cap to find you something to fucking do in the shop because you weren't going to want to fucking do it. And that's just how it was working with
It was
him.
like stepping back in time, becoming an apprentice all over
I
again.
mean, it was really, it was one of those things because I feel like working with Dino, Dino was never, like, he was a good guy to work for. Like, it was like, it was easy working for Dino. But then I think I got too comfortable with how easy it was for me. Like, I felt like I wasn't growing anymore because I didn't have to fucking do anything.
I think after a time, it seems like almost things become just second nature, and then it becomes matter of fact, and then it just
You're just
becomes
comfortable.
another day.
Like, people come in and ask for me. Like, I can ask for, I don't even have to ask for time off. I could just decide not to go to work one day.
Yeah.
And there was no one that was going to say anything because I was a reliable fucking guy. But it's not like I did.
Right.
None of us took days off.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just worked. I mean, you were just happy to have a job to go to.
Yeah,
and again, being a tattooer, there's a lot worse things to fucking have to do. I mean, I enjoyed the living shit out of being on, being able to work and just going to work every single day.
Right.
And again, we're also creatures of habit. We have a way in which we do, and you want to do it every single day.
Yeah, but I think working with Timeless, it was like, I don't feel like I ever fit in there. It was definitely a more traditional setup shop. Like everybody there did traditional. I was like the fucking new school guy. It was like at the end of new school, you know, when I started working for Cap. So new school was definitely going back underground. It wasn't like a known style, because it was, I feel like new school became famous with magazines.
Magazines definitely helped it.
Yeah, like Tattoo International.
Yeah.
I remember back in the day when International, that was like my favorite magazine. So whenever they were released, you go to the bookstore and look through it and see if any of your favorite artists were in there, then you would buy that magazine.
What I did want to ask you, when you did work for Cap, like you said, it was a really traditional shop, you know. And so when I got tattooed by him, I knew him for black and gray, like the best black and gray, single needle black and gray work, you know. And Dave Attenito got a tattoo from Cap, like probably about 6-7 months before I decided to get tattooed by him. But I remember seeing the tattoo and him being like, it's a Sailor Jerry girl, it's like a mermaid, I believe, on the inside of his upper arm, and it's fucking drop dead gorgeous. It is perfectly tattooed. The color is insanely saturated, smooth, solid. And I'm like, who did that? He's like, Cap. And I'm like, no, we didn't. And he's like, yeah, it's Cap, dude. And I'm like, no fucking way. I'm like, that's amazing, dude. I didn't even know he'd color.
Oh yeah, he's.
Well, that was the thing. And when I sent him off, I sent him the picture of my arm, what I wanted to get done. And again, this is before internet. Everything had to be FedExed out and stuff. I had to send him a money order for a deposit and shit. And I drove from Long Island, New York, down to Georgia, and I spent time with Dave. And when I walked into the Cap shop, everybody's like, "Oh, you're here for your appointment?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here for my appointment. I got a new with Cap." And they're just like, "Oh, cool. You're getting the pinup girl, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh, cool, black and gray, right?" I'm like, "No, color." And I made it clear in the letter and on talking to the phone, because I talked to Bethra on the phone. I'm like, "No, color." And they're like, "Yeah, Cap he doesn't do color." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, he does. He did a beautiful front tattoo on my friend." Yeah,
I've seen it.
Yeah, exactly. He did a beautiful tattoo on my friend. And they're just like, "Oh, okay, whatever." And they walked away like crazy, you know? So then the next person would come in, and now the drawing's on the counter because he's still not there. And they got my folder out on the counter. And somebody else comes in, it's like, "Oh, yeah, you're getting this tattoo today?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Black and gray, right?" I'm like, "No, man, color." And they're just like, "Yeah, Cap don't do color." And I'm like, "Yeah, he does." I think that happened 3 times. And then Cap walks in, and he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" He shakes my hand. And I don't think, I've seen him at shows, but I never actually met him, I don't think, you know? And he goes behind the counter, and he's redrawing the piece. And I was so anal and so excited to get tattooed by him. I made like a line drawing up. I sent him a line drawing, all this shit. But he's just making his own stencil, and he does it like right over the photograph, right. Which is something I'd never seen before, you know? And I wanted it to say, "Good morning, heartache" on the bottom of it. And I knew his lettering was really solid, really beautiful. So he's just like, "Black and gray, right?" And I'm like, "No, man, color. We went through this. It's in the fucking letter. Talk to your fucking wife. Color." And he's like, "Oh, okay, cool. Finishes it up. He goes into his room, sets up. He gets me down there, puts a stencil on. I was really excited. Now I'm kind of getting nervous, and I'm really excited to be getting tattooed by this guy. He just draws the fucking "Good morning, heartache" on the thing with a pen, and sets his machines up. And he's like, "You really sure you don't want this in black and gray?" And I'm like, "No, I want it in color." He goes, "Yeah, man, but I don't really do color." And I'm like,
Yes,
you do, man. I was like, "You did a beautiful fucking color tattoo on Dave Attenito. It is one of the nicest traditional tattoos I've ever fucking seen. I want it in color. And if you don't want to do it in color, I will fucking leave right fucking now. Get in my car and drive back to fucking Long Island." And I started going into a rant. And he's like, whoa, okay, relax. He's like, "We'll do it in color." He starts tattooing, and dude, first time I'd ever been tattooed with single needle. And just to see, like, at one point I was laughing because he does the whole outline he did the whole outline with like a tight 5 and a single. And then he starts filling in the lettering with a single needle. And I'm just laughing. He goes, "What are you laughing at?" I'm like, "I've never seen anybody fill in anything with a fucking single needle. Like, what the fuck, dude? You had a 5. You could have filled it into 5. Like, it blew my mind." And then he does the whole thing with a little bit of black shading. Dude, this tattoo was like 6 or 6.5 hours, I think it was, which for me we talked earlier, it was the longest I'd ever sat for a tattoo. But dude, when this tattoo was done, I was so blown away. It changed everything about the way I tattoo. It changed how I thought about tattooing. Like, talking to him and realizing that he spent a lot of time in the Southwest, and that's where he met Brian, and that's what his attraction to where black and gray single needle came from, because he was known for doing color traditional stuff. I was just like, no idea who this person was, and having had the experience to get tattooed by him, blown away by it. And till this day, it's still one of my best tattoos.
Have you ever looked at his needles?
No. So yes. So this is something we talked about earlier. This is amazing. So this is in a day and age where we made needles, or not me necessarily, because I was lucky. But yeah, like you said that you went there, and one of the things you wanted to pick up, and that's kind of what I wanted to see. Did you learn any techniques or anything like that? But explain the needle thing, because this is amazing.
So I know before I started working with Cap, working at Psycho, we used to make our own needles. I'm pretty certain at that time I was using like Sheffield's Finest, which were like an English cut.
Yeah, we were talking with it came from the UK.
Yeah, and so we used to have to buy our own needles and take the day off and do it. And I remember Cap, that was one of the things that he opened up with offering, was the fact that he offered needles, which was like a really big offer. Like, you don't have to pay for needles. Like, that's really fucking cool. So I remember getting there, and he tells me where the needle making stuff is. So I go back there, and they were like, they look like sewing needles, and I'd never seen, like, I didn't know that was like an old school thing. Like, they literally bought raw sewing needles, and then they would like clip off the eye loops on them.
I didn't know that either, and I'm sure there's gonna be a bunch of people that would come on this and be like, "What the fuck do you mean you didn't know that?" Like, dude, I caught so much. Anytime I have any kind of ignorance whatsoever, there's hundreds of people out there that just want to call me on shit.
Well, one of the weirdest things that I remember at his needles, he used to, after he would solder his needles and tighten up the front of the needle, he would solder on a piece of copper.
Okay, it's funny. So
his needles.
When I took Jack Rudy's seminar back in, it was more of just him talking, but he does go into a little bit of technique. He went into his mags and stuff like that, and he was talking about how they would solder this little bit of copper on the bottom, and the idea was
I've never seen it anywhere but
neither
Cap.
I've never seen it. I've never seen it. So I never looked at Cap.
I think it might be like a West Coast thing, because those guys were like Route 66, and
and like I said, Jack was the only person I know that had ever mentioned that. And I guess the idea was it didn't rub against the bottom of the.
It saved your tubes.
Your tubes.
Because I remember, kids don't know the problems of tubes, but depending on how well your tubes were made, you would have these open grooves so where your needles would cut into the steel.
It's funny you say that, like how younger people wouldn't know, but it's not even so much the quality, it's how long you had the tube. Like, you knew you had a tube for a long time when it had, it looked
and
like.
You still used it.
It looked like teeth.
You would try to bend it up.
Exactly, it looked like teeth, and then some of the sidewalls would pop out, and every now and again your needle would just be like, and it would just shoot out the corner. Dude. Oh, it's amazing.
No,
it's so
I remember very clearly, like Cap, I remember seeing his needles for the first time and seeing the solder, which was like this whole nother step on making a fucking needle. So to me, it was just like, why are you wasting that time? Why are you doing that? And he was like, oh, it saves your tubes. And I was just like, oh, like, that's weird. But I remember.
Now, the funny thing is, what needs to be said after that is, these needles got used a lot.
And that was the other thing. I remember I probably worked with him for a whole year before I even figured that out.
Yeah.
The counter guy.
Somebody else cleaned the needles.
His name was Paulie.
That was my job, yeah.
Paulie was the counter guy, and his job, he would take the needles, get all of Cap's used needles, autoclave them, and then after they autoclave, open them up, and then he'd have to scrub each one of those needles. And this is like a bag, like thousands of fucking needles.
Yeah.
He would have to hand scrub each one of those, and after he hand scrubbed them, he would have to file them. So it was like a file of sandpaper and different grits, and refile each one of those needles and get them back to a point, and then look at them in the eye loop. And I had walked back there while he was doing it one time, and I'm like, what are you doing, man? And he's like, oh, nothing.
Oh, he didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
And I was like, what do you mean nothing? And he's like, I'm not supposed to talk about it. And I'm just like, what do you mean? And he's like, these are his reused needles. And I'm like, nah. And he's like, yeah. And I'm just like, what? And it was like this unspoken thing, but that's
we didn't stop.
He was from that generation. Like,
I was gonna say, we didn't stop reusing needles until, I want to say, it was at Lotus, so it had to be probably around 90, God, it had probably 97, 98. I think we stopped reusing needles.
I mean, I worked at Cap with 2002 through 2005, and he still
did it. Yeah. Well, I think by that point, it got to a thing where it was like health departments were being a little bit more ambitious about coming in and seeing stuff.
But again, like Atlanta had no visible health department at all. So like we had no governing.
It's like the Wild
Wild West in fucking Georgia days. That's how it was back then.
Nice.
But you know, I learned a lot with Cap. Cap really humbled my career. I remember I was at a point in my career where like all the people you look up to had like a very clear style. Like you, for instance, you're putting
like the blood. Well, I didn't call it blood pudding back then. I just called them capo gals.
I'm saying, but it's just one of those things. Like I remember even working with Dino. Like we had Flash, we had Joe Capobianco Flash.
I was very fortunate back then.
We had Corey Miller Flash.
Yeah,
like all the Flash that was like really fucking great.
Yeah.
But then there was always the Cherry Creek stuff that we hated people fucking going near because we were just like, oh, look at this nun with her tits out that Joe fucking did. That'd be a great addition to your collection.
So, well, what about this dream catcher over here? Oh, the ball.
Yeah, and we would just be like, fuck. And like, I remember like in that year, like, I mean, the 90s, just bitching about Flash all the time, like doing Looney Tune tattoos. Like that was like a super popular thing here in Georgia.
Oh yeah.
Every other guy would come in and want a Taz and be like, oh god damn it, like another Taz. Whereas now, if somebody came in here and wanted a Taz,
you jump.
Oh, I'd be like, oh, how do you want him? Want him in the whirlwind? Like what?
You want the whirlwind? Want him lifting weights? Want him in a bike? I might have some flashback here.
It'd be fun as fuck to do a Tasmanian Devil, but back then it was like every person who walked through the door wanted Cherry Creek stuff.
So I was very fortunate because the shops that I worked in, like Lotus, like Cliff's tattoo shop was ridiculous. Like Cliff had the most amount of Flash in any shop that I ever worked in. And compared to, I'll be honest with you, even compared to some of the shops today that I think have a lot of Flash, Cliff's had a lot. And when we opened Lotus, we were all collecting Flash. Like Civ would pick up stuff. Tom probably picked up the most of it. Tom Butler and Civ owned the shop at the time. And then I was picking up my own Flash. Then I started producing my own Flash. So the Flash that we had on the walls was all J.D. Crowe, and that was on on two of the main walls. And then the rest of it was just these giant Flash racks, just full of whatever we picked up. West Coast artists, you know, like some European guys, like a couple of Midwest guys, some black and gray stuff. But it was a little bit more in the way of color, and so we got to do a little bit more color than I did to do it at Cliff's. But Cliff had all color, but for whatever reason, it was more of a biker. A lot more bikers got tattooed back in the day from us than regular people. So They tended for the black and gray, and you know, regular people ended up coming in with little flowers or like the Tasmanian Devils and the Tweety birds and shit. Like part of my first week of my apprenticeship, I had to do like a shit ton of like Looney Tunes Flash, and I had a bunch of Chuck Jones books. Like I'm a huge Warner Brothers fan. So I remember, like, I brought in all my books, and I was just making photocopies and do redrawing and retracing, and like Tasman. There was a sheet of Taz's, and like I said, leather biker jacket, fucking lifting weights, holding a rose, like any number of dumb shit tattoos, ideas. But that was my 1 week was just me retracing and making like 5 sheets of fucking Looney Tunes and Mickey Mouse sheets and shit, and hand coloring with marker and colored pencils and stuff. But it was great because people are coming in and they see that, oh, you did that? I'll do the Gossamer monster, the big orange tooth guy,
I mean, back then, like I feel like we as tattoo artists, you really had to sell a custom tattoo.
Yeah.
Like most people just wanted what was on the wall, but that was like what tattooing was limited to back then. Yeah. So like there were a lot of us that were artists coming into this industry that you wanted to do the stuff that you saw in the fucking magazine.
Exactly.
So you like, this is who you want to be. But even working with Cap, I remember like I was definitely a new school guy. I had like this period where I was like doing Sacred Hearts and birds, and that was like my excitement for tattooing. Like if someone came in and asked for that, then I'd like, superpowers were like engaged, and I would like totally get into it. And I think Cap noticed that I had like a different energy with the clients that let me do what I did than I had an energy with the people who weren't getting what I want, which was a problem for Cap.
Yeah.
So he would see me with this lesser energy with someone wanting something flash that wasn't my style, and he would see that I didn't notice, but he would see that I clearly treated these people different.
Right.
So you would basically get the knock on the door, like, hey, step outside for a second. And it's like, what the fuck are you doing here? And it's like, what the fuck are you doing here? It's like, you fucking work for me. You fucking got to do, you fucking treat them the same way you treat them. And he would like yell at you. But I remember like the most important thing, Cat pulled me aside and pulled out one of his old portfolios. And it was this portfolio that was like the biggest portfolio I've ever seen, packed full of like back pieces and all these things that Cap had done throughout his whole career, but he had it hidden in his front counter under all this junk.
Fuck, really?
And I'm like spinning through it like, holy shit, this is fucking great, like looking at it. And he's just like, look at it. So I want you to know, like this piece right here, this took me this much time. It was like this beautiful lion on a Serengeti, like this whole back piece he had done years before. And he's like, this guy is like a lawyer somewhere, blah, blah, blah. No one's ever gonna see this fucking tattoo. No one will ever know that I put this much work on this guy and see the care and techniques that I put into this thing. He's like, but this tattoo was like a little daisy on this chick. It's like, this was her first tattoo. And I treated her like $1 million fucking dollars. She sends me so many fucking people, like tells me how I treated her and gave her a good experience. And it was like something that she didn't think that someone would want to do. And he's like, and that's why you're fucking here. You're here to give a good experience to people. And then that kind of, I don't think like I fully understood it, but now as a studio owner, I fully understand what he was doing, because, you know, if I have guys here that don't want to do what comes through the door, why the fuck are you here?
Yeah, that's a good point.
This is my fucking business. These are people coming here to this business because I opened it here.
Yeah. And
you want to be a part of this, but if you want to treat people like shit for getting what they want, then go fucking somewhere else.
I will admit, man, it is after having done this for so many years, you know, it's amazing that Cap at that time still had that determination and that spark, or that, I shouldn't say it's not even necessarily a spark. It literally is just the way you do business, the proper way of doing business, professionalism. It's hard to have that, because you go in there and you do the same things almost every day. The same people coming in, same types of people are coming in for the same type of work. You know, a name too small on the outside of their wrist or on the side of their palm, and you go in there and you, like you said, you want to have that same spark for that person. You do want to give them the best experience, but it is one of those things. It's like, all right, it's only the 180th person that I have to do this for, you know. So it is really difficult, but I think it's also just a different generation of tattooer, where it's like, it's just the way it is, man. Fucking deal with it or fucking walk.
Well, I think Cap, he was, he had a lot of like really weird things. Like I know I wasn't allowed to talk to other professionals about products.
Oh really? But this is well before like sponsorships and stuff like that, right?
If I was tattooing a tattoo artist and the artist asked me like what kind of ink or what kind of machines I use or what kind of needles, and Cap overheard you sharing that information, Cap would come to the door and be like, hey man, you come out here for a second. And then you would get yelled at.
How often did you get asked to come outside?
I got yelled at a lot working with Cap. I mean, it was just a thing with Cap. But like I said, I think Cap really had this way that he felt about younger tattoo artists. He hated them. Yeah. He hated anybody learning how to tattoo. He hated the presence of more tattoo artists at all times. So like if people came in and asked Cap, you know, about apprenticeships, he would like freak the fuck out on them. Like, fuck you, dude. We don't fucking need you here. Go fucking do something else. Become a lawyer. You know, and just like yell at him, and they'd like walk out all crying. And we'd be like, Cap, chill out, dude. Like, what the fuck, dude? But that's how he felt. Like he really felt like, obviously it's saturated.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and that was back then.
But I'm saying, but he saw it back then. Yeah. Like he was very aware of it. But he really chose who he decided to help. And like, of course, me getting a job there, like I was really happy to have that job, but then it was like literally the worst job I've ever had, because he was so fucking mean, but mean in a good way. Like,
well, again, I think it's a tough, you could look at it as maybe being a tough love thing, you know?
You know what, I think with Cap, I think Cap was the first person that I left on really good terms. And I think that was what I did learn from Cap, that Cap really didn't expect anybody working with him like, you're gonna be here for fucking ever.
Right.
Cap really understood that his time with you was definitely going to be limited, whether it was limited to like 20 years to like 2 years.
Yeah.
He wanted to have an impact on your career in some kind of way that you would look back.
Now, do you think it was intentional, or do you think that's just the way he was? Like that
It's
was
just the way he was. Yeah. I remember, leaving Miami's. It was difficult. I remember writing a letter and giving a notice and him being like, fuck off. And then Dino, I got the job with Cap. And so I put like a 3-week notice in, and Dino's like, fuck off, get the fuck out of here. And I think he even attempted to keep me from getting my job at Cap's.
Oh, he made some phone calls?
Oh, he called Cap and told him that I was under contract, which I wasn't. And Cap figured out that I wasn't. And then Cap yelled at him for...
Who are you trying? You
literally. Cap's like, you're telling me what to fucking do? I've been here way longer than you. He's like, you fucking asked me for fucking... And that's how Cap was.
Yeah.
And so like I remember immediately thinking like, holy shit, this is the guy I'm going to work for.
Yeah.
Then I go into work and I get yelled at for
making him going to work. And you're like,
he was mad at me for having to yell at someone. So you're gonna yell at me for that fucking shit. And so it was like cool because Cap, I remember telling him that I was leaving, which was like, if you could imagine, my relationship with Cap was difficult because he was such an angry fucking person. So here it is, like the most difficult conversation I'm having with Cap was like telling him I'm leaving. And he was answered with advice.
Oh, that's super.
No, he like, I'm happy for you. He's like, I'll give you some advice, it'll be really helpful for you. He's like, I don't think that you'll be successful. I really don't think that you can run a tattoo studio, but he's like, if you do, this is what you need to do. And he gave me advice, and it was really important advice.
Then he was like, now get the fuck out.
Well, he just said I'm too fucking nice, and that's kind of like my thing. Like I'm not fucking mean to people because I understand how I felt working with Cap. Like this is like an industry that I have like a lot of passion for to this day. Like I just enjoy tattooing. I enjoy like the interaction with people, getting to know people from different walks of life, which I feel like now we're tattooing people that 20, 30 years ago never would have even thought about getting a tattoo. We're doing tattoos in places that, I feel like in 95 when I got my forearms tattooed, that was like a death sentence for a career. Like that was I feel like when I did my forearms, that was me kind of making a statement like, well, now I can't go back to whatever normal is gonna be. I'm locked in this career and this is what I want to do. And so I remember getting my neck tattooed. That was like literally like,
oh, that's
like, now you're done.
That's
like,
walking
now
the
you're
plank.
a tattoo artist for
that's
art.
walking the plank.
Now you can go into any restaurant and see like a bartender or server with fucking their whole neck blasted.
Yeah.
Like looking like more of a tattoo artist than I am.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit.
Look at the chefs. Like I get confused as being a chef. Like, where do you work? I'm like, oh, I'm in Hope Gallery. And they're like, oh, I thought you were a chef. And I'm like, no. Went out to dinner with a couple of friends like a few months ago, and like, there's a bartender, a chef, myself, and one other friend who's not tattooed. He's got one or two, but you can't tell. And the table next to us, were like immediately we're just like, so you're the tattooer? Like, he's like, and he's known in the town. And he's like, yeah, I'm the tattooer. He owns millwrights, and this guy here is an FBI agent, and they had no idea. They just assumed we were all tattooers, and it was just like, it was funny, but it is weird because it's like, I can't believe we're having this conversation with such square people.
I mean, I've been with clients of mine that have visibly 10 times more tattoos than I have, and people will come up to them and be like, hey, do you do tattoos? They're like, no, he does. Like, oh, he does? Like, really? It's like,
he's my tattooer.
He didn't look like a tattoo artist. Like, you look more like yeah, that's fucking how shit is right now. Everyone looks like a fucking tattoo artist.
Well, so you opened the shop, and like, what made you decide to, like, obviously you wanted to have your own, make your own statement on the business. You want to have your own vibe for the shop, right?
I think the key thing to me opening my studio was me getting at the end of looking for the greener pasture. So like, I feel like before I opened up my studio, I felt like especially like if you are near a major city, so me being like right outside of Atlanta, it always appeared from the outside that the Atlanta artists that were based in Atlanta got way more respect. They did way cooler tattoos. It just seemed like it was way more fun going on over here. And so then I get a job working with Cap, and it wasn't. It was the same thing as working.
Yeah, out of
it didn't matter. Like you're
nowhere.
tattooing the same fucking thing, same fucking flash, same everything. You're just in the city fucking doing it.
Yeah.
So I think I got to a point in my career where I really felt like I had a good following. I felt like I would have enough people to follow me wherever I went, and I really didn't think it mattered where
you were. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's just quiet town Carrollton, out way, like I don't think anyone in Atlanta, you have to be described, like you have to tell people like geographically where Carrollton is, because like people have heard of it but they don't know where it's at. So it's like, oh, it's like you're going to Alabama, slow down before you get to Alabama, you're in fucking Carrollton, and that's where Carrollton is. So it's just like really small. I think to anybody else before you get here, like it would just seem like it's in the sticks, but it's a very tight-knit, small community it's well kept, and a lot of really interesting businesses here. And it's definitely it was scary opening up my business here, because I think even looking at properties, tattooing was still very obscure out here. So it was hard to find someone that would even lease you a building.
Right.
The minute they learn, like, oh, what kind of business is going to be? And you'd be like, a tattoo studio. Like, oh no,
we don't do that.
And so you started lying, So I think I went through a few places just to get in the door to look at the place. I would tell them I was a design company. I'm a design firm. We do websites and shit. And that's like, people are like, oh, that's really cool. Like, oh yeah, come look at the building. And then you're like looking around, like, so that's the only way you can even look at buildings out here. So I think once I found the building I ended up getting and locking it in, and then once they learn, like I really had to hide tattooing in the name just to even sit down at the table and just make myself known, where, you talk to people and they get a feel for you and like, oh, this guy's like level-headed.
Exactly.
He's a business person. He's pretty much legit. He's not like satanic cult, what they would imagine.
Exactly. You're not some goth guy or
meth moving biker coming through the town.
Exactly,
like they saw me and they gave me an opportunity, and now I can't even picture myself not being
in
here.
This area.
Yeah, I love it. Like it's cool because I've been to a lot of places. I've worked in a city where I feel like when you work in a town like this, the younger tattoo artists kind of envision themselves where I was.
Right.
And they kind of look, why are you here? It's like, dude, like this is, I did that. Like I'm not into that. And even when people come out here asking for a job, I always try to persuade them to go do what I did, because I don't think that you could really appreciate.
You can't appreciate the quieter side of the quieter neighborhood.
You have to be in the fire. To enjoy
to enjoy not being on fire.
That's how it is. But I love it out here. It's done a lot for my career. I feel like when you move to a new environment, you definitely have to go through the proving yourself all over again, because you don't have any of your accomplishments to follow you.
Exactly.
You just have a portfolio.
Yeah.
But still, there's people who don't even give a fuck about your portfolio, and they come in like, can you do kanji?
Yeah.
Like, yes, I can totally do kanji. Like, do you have any pictures of kanji? And they're like, my portfolio.
You don't have a kanji specialist.
I don't have any pictures of kanji. Like, I'll go through a portfolio like, hey, it's really weird. I don't have any of that in here, but I can do it. It's
like, you're going to have to trust me on this one.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I had to do. And so I feel like that was probably the only difficulty of reinventing myself out here. But I think the hard work that it took and the patience that I had to display to like prove myself, because I mean, a lot of older artists don't want to.
Yeah.
No, it's like, I mean, even artists, I mean, I'm seeing it right now, artists that were relevant back in the day going to conventions, and you have like these younger artists that are super relevant right now, and the older guys just
dude, we were talking about before.
Sitting around.
I spend more time sitting in my booth not doing a goddamn thing, and then occasionally someone will come by that recognizes you or knows you. Like, can I get a photo? And it's just like, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm not doing anything anyways. So.
Well, I mean, realistically, I mean, you're looking at a guy that has like 20 to 30 plus years of tattooing underneath their belt, and yet the people who are like popping at conventions are like 2-year tattooists. They literally have no idea how their tattoo is going to look in 5 years, because they haven't been doing it long enough.
Well, and I think the difference between, say, coming up in the 90s, and through most of my career, like up until probably like I said, maybe 2016, 17, where it was wine and roses that entire time, you know. I think the difference was, you know, when I went to a convention 3 years in and starting to make a name for myself, Cap, Jack, Tony Olivas, Guy, all those guys were still tattooing. Sailor Moses, Sean Anderson. Like when I did conventions, like I came in as the young upstart, but everybody else was still tattooing. So everybody's on the floor, head down, working. And it's not until the end of the day comes where everybody's looking around and then you go to the bar or you pay attention to what's happening on the stage and you realize, oh, Joe won the award, you know, won Best of Day today, or, you know, Dino won Best of Day today. We're all at the bar later on, and there might be a little bit of animosity in the back of that person's head, you know. But with someone like Cap, I remember there was none. Like he was super, super nice, which is why it's weird to hear that he was such an angry person. But I think the difference between then and now is the fact that now we go to shows and the new generation of tattoo client wants nothing to do, and most nothing to do with the older generation of tattooer. They just want to know what's going on with that guy who's been tattooing for 3 years doing, like you said, the unproven style, you know?
I mean, I feel like I think one of my weird things about conventions now is like the platform of conventions and what it is. So, and I still get asked that, like, I mean, there's still a lot of people who get tattoos that have never stepped foot into a convention. They don't even understand
what the dynamic is.
And so I get that question a lot, like, oh, what do you do at the convention? Do you actually tattoo? Like, yeah. That's what we do. And it's like, well, why? And it's like, it's a weird question because a long time ago, there was a very clear use of conventions, and that was putting yourself outside of your environment.
Yeah.
Like you traveled to another city that you were a foreigner in. Like, I mean, depending on what city you went to, some cities will work really hard. Like I remember going to South Florida conventions was really fucked up because people were into their local artists. So you would go to this South Florida tattoo convention the first year and no one would even look at you. I remember doing the South Florida convention with Dino and Mike Parsons. Not one of us tattooed the whole fucking weekend the first time we did it.
Because they were all local.
They weren't locals.
Yeah.
But then you come back the next year, they recognize you from the year before and like, oh, okay, so now you're a local.
Yeah.
And then they start, like, so the more you go to that convention, the more you get a following at that convention. But to me, that was what conventions were gaining a following outside of your known environment. So,
which is why, you know, back in the day, I never booked appointments. You'd always show up at the convention.
And just put your work out there and somebody will come by and look through your book.
Because you were doing something that nobody else maybe nobody else in their city could do, or you're like the new import that they want to get a piece of.
Well, there was hardly even a way to book appointments in another city.
And that's another thing. We
didn't
have the
had
internet.
to just show up and just be that fucking dude.
I remember, like, before you go to certain conventions, they'd make phone calls. First time I did the London convention, people are literally, so you got people in the UK, you know, they're staying up late, you know, because they're 6 hours ahead, so they got to call up and be like, you know, they got to call at the right hour, you know, just after dinner, they're calling the shop at 1 o'clock in the afternoon by us, and they're like, yeah, man, I want to get tattooed. I was like, is there any way? And I remember the first year I booked appointments for the show, and Mickey Violetto got real pissed that people booked appointments. So every year after that, I would just show up, you know, which is just as crazy though, because people bum rush this booth when, you know, they're calling the shop, or, you know, they're like, hey, can I get an appointment? I'm like, you got to just show up, dude. I'm not booking appointments, you know. I just first come, first serve.
Well, back then, if you work for someone, like, so working with Dino always had appointments at the conventions. So if you worked with Dino at the convention, you were there to work on the people who came up to the booth. Yeah. And so I remember working with Cap. That was what I learned with Cap. Cap, if you didn't greet every single person that came up to the booth formally, like, stop what you're doing.
You're selling.
Hey, how you doing, man? How you doing? What you looking for? Like, what do you think about doing? Like, this and that. And then if you didn't talk to him, Cap would just sit there and stare at you while the people were just looking at you, and he would fucking snap on you. Why the fuck did I you see that fucking guy staring at you? Are you staring at him? Yeah. The fuck? Why are you staring? Because you want a fucking tattoo, right? And then he would like yell at you. And so to this day, I have a nervous habit of like speaking to people just because I feel like cats get.
You just get waiting for somebody to start yelling.
But that was my gimmick at conventions. Like you talk to people, and people will come by and they talk to you. Then they walk around a convention and get ignored by all the other booths. Yeah. Then they would remember.
And they come back to the booth. That
guy friendly. Over there with Cap. He fucking talked to me. He was really fucking cool. Then they'll make their way back to you like, hey man, I talked to you. Like, yeah, how you doing, man? Like, yeah. So you have time for that? And like, yeah, I sure do. Then you start drawing, and then once you started working,
I think it's the art of the. I mean, the fact of the matter is, not a lot of people have that. They don't have that skill, unfortunately. And again, we go to conventions, and they're still a huge generation that still does all that. They set their booth up really nice. They have flash ready to go, and they're all about jumping on. Like, you know, man, what are you looking to do something? You want something big, something small? Like, they are selling it, or they'll bring somebody with them. They might be a guy he's incapable of talking, so he brings his girlfriend who's chatty as fuck. And she can sit there and sell the stuff. I mean, if you think about it, look at Paul Booth back in the day. You know, Barbara. I mean, he did her back.
He'd just be sitting in there.
Exactly, just sitting. You know, and Barbara was up there wearing next to nothing to show off the back piece that he did on her. And she was the one that would be like, oh, what are you looking to get done? Like, oh man, Paul might have time afterward. And he's just sitting there like brooding up at them, you know.
He was one of those guys, I would watch him tattoo and it just looked like a mirage when he was tattooing because you just saw hand movement and then beautiful tattoo come from behind whatever he wiped off and you're just like...
It's still like that, man.
It's just amazing. Like I would just see him tattooing and just sit there and just peek over because there was always like a crowd around him when he was tattooing so you would just come in and get a look.
It was weird to see him at Hell City last year. He's still doing the same shit, dude. He's cranking, like just doing a ton of work and doing like three tattoos a day, 4 tattoos a day, like one right after the next.
Which is a lot.
He's super quick, but he doesn't have the same crowds that he used to.
Right.
And that's kind of a bummer. I remember the Philadelphia convention. I think it was the first year I did it, and I was working with Corey Kruger, and it was crazy, man, because like I'm sitting there, I'm setting up, I'm getting ready to work. I think I was working on Andy that day from Germany, and this kid comes up to me. He's like, "Yo, man," he's like. You know, I want to get tattooed by Paul Booth. And this is like at noon. And I'm like, all right, cool. You do realize you're talking to the wrong guy, right? The wrong fat dude. I'm not Paul. He goes, oh, no, I know that. He's like, but, you know, his booth is right there. And we were like diagonally across from him. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, how do I get an appointment with him? Obviously, I had maybe never been to a convention. I don't know. And I'm like, well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's not going to be here for at least another hour or so because it's Paul. There's probably a timer on his coffin before it opens. But I'm like, his booth is empty right now. My suggestion to you is to beat the crowd because when he shows up, there's going to be people following him.
Right.
I would sit your ass in that fucking booth and tell him the moment he walks in that you want to get tattooed by him because I guarantee he's going to show up with people.
Right.
No fucking exaggeration, dude. Paul comes walking by and I had a corner of my eye see him rolling up and he's got a bunch of people with him. Don't think anything of it. I'm tattooing all fucking day long. Around, I don't know, 6 o'clock that night, kid comes up and he's like, dude, check it out. He's like, you got tattooed? And he's like, yeah, dude, first one. Thank you. And I'm like, you're welcome, you know? So it was cool, but that's the best thing about going to conventions, to be able to score something like that. And not like I got tattooed by Mario Barth, the Richmond convention. I think it was the year that I was just selling Flash. I went there to sell Flash in 97 or 96. And dude, I was jazzed. I had no idea. Like I'm looking around. I knew Mario's work from the magazines. I was a huge fan of him, Bernie Luther, a bunch of those European guys. And I walked up there and I'm like, at that time, his wife Monica was running the front of it, and she didn't talk much either. It was like the two of them. Neither one of them really spoke. But I was like, hey, I really want to get tattooed by him. And she's like, oh. She reached over, and I'm pretty certain she was Austrian as well. And they're talking back and forth. He's like, yeah, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to get my piece here. I don't know, whatever, one of your fucking things. Yeah, come back in a couple hours. I'm like, all right, cool. Walking around the floor, kept coming back. And he did this one Sailor Jerry right off a stencil. He traced it off a stencil. Did a Sailor Jerry girl on a guy, and then I was the next one in. Drew something on me, talked to him for a bunch. At the end of it, he's like, what do you have there? And I'm like, oh, it's a bunch of tattoo Flash. He's like, well, can I see it? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I fucking hand him a Flash. He's going through it.
What year is this?
This was 96. So I had like 3 sets of Flash. I had 3 sets of 10 sheets, I think, or 3 sets of 6 and 10, 110. And he's
the
going
one with
through
the nuns.
No, that came a couple years later.
I have a bootleg version of that.
Oh, do you? Yeah, there was a lot of bootleg stuff. A lot of that Flash was bootleg back in the day. But yeah, he ended up. He's like, I'll take all the Flash. I'm like, cool. And he's like, how much is it? And I told him, and he's like, all right. He's cool. He's like, just give me $200. I'm like, that's it? He goes, yeah, give me $200 in the Flash. It's yours. I'm like, fuck, dude. He did this huge fucking. I was like, I was fucking stoked. You know what I mean? But that was exciting as fuck. I mean, again, that's the excitement of having been to a show the first time, and you're getting something. I was never going to get tattooed by that guy. I mean, although at that time he was living in Jersey. I think he had moved here from the States, and now he's in Jersey. Yeah, exactly. So it's such a weird thing.
Before he hit Vegas.
Dude. Yeah, exactly. This Austrian dude ends up in Jersey, you know? So, yeah, I got to bring it up, and I don't want to. I really don't. But fucking InkMaster, dude. How did that come about?
You know, it's weird. It's really weird because, I mean, even InkMaster, it's not a new tool anymore. Like,
oh God, no.
So when I went on the show, it was like season 3, the first time. So I think that they were still going through the learning curve of our field.
Yeah.
Like learning the pains and woes of this broken vessel.
Well, I think it was the idea of trying to figure out clients as well as tattooers.
Well, I think they definitely had a great idea for marketing on their hands, but I think everybody in tattooing that's definitely old school got into tattooing because we had like authority issues.
Right.
But then here you are signing up for a program that's going to be nothing but fucking authority on what you fucking do.
Exactly. Being told what to do by people who know nothing about it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like before I went on the show, which I think anybody would be attracted to, like you watched the 2 seasons before, these artists that you've never seen before, and then they bring their styles in, and then they get known, and then like after the season ends, you're like seeing these guys like on planes, traveling together, sponsorships, and all these great things, and you're seeing these careers being started. So I remember after season 1, they were doing auditions back then. So they would pick like a major city and run auditions, and so I'd gone to one of these auditions. And it's one of those things like to watch the show and watch everything on the show and feel like, oh, I can do that. And then you get to the audition and you're not that person that they want you to be. Like, I remember how difficult the audition was because it was just like, well, I swear to you, I'm an interesting person, but right now
I don't know what to say.
I'm drawing a blank. Yeah. Like, what's your name? I'm like, I'm Craig. It's just, it was like difficult. It was like the worst. Like, I had really good work, and I think by the time I got cast for the first season of it, I'd already been tattooing like 18 years. So it's not like I was like a beginning tattoo artist. I already had a career behind me. I definitely understand that the fact that no one knew who I was coming onto the show was probably the best thing that ever happened for me because literally no one gave a shit about me. So like they were like looking at Jimmy, you know.
Right. Who had a
I knew Jimmy before the show. A funny story. Years before, I had never put a face of Jimmy Litwalk to the actual person.
Right.
So I knew Jimmy, and I knew who Jimmy Litwalk was, but I never knew that they were the same person. Jimmy back then was like this super nice guy that I would see at conventions that I was familiar with his face, but I didn't know what his work looked like. Right. He was just a kind guy. He knew that I was married.
It was more from reputation than it was like
anything.
Actual,
yeah, so he would always, every time I saw him, like, hey, what's up, Jim? And he'd be like, what's up, dude? How's your wife? I'm like, great. Hey, how's your kids? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, great. And then he would like walk on. So it was like one convention, it was the Atlanta convention. I'm in the booth with Josh Ford and a friend of mine, Radar, and we're all like working. Jimmy comes walking by the booth. We're still setting up. And he comes by and me and Jimmy like give a hug. And he talks to me for a minute, and we like chit chat, and then Jimmy like moves on. And I was like, yeah, I'll come on and check out your booth like later, which was just small talk.
Yeah, right.
I'm gonna be busy all fucking day, so I'm never gonna go see anybody's.
Like, this is the last I'm gonna see of you.
Yeah, that's what you do. You get to the convention, and somebody comes by, and you're like, I'm gonna come by there and say hello to you. And it's literally the end of the weekend, and you're like,
exactly.
Hey, how's your weekend going? And it's like I remember saying that, and then Jimmy walked. Josh Ford's wife at the time, her name was Lisa, and she's like, I wish I knew Jimmy Litwalk was here. I wanted to get work by him. And I'm like, oh, Jimmy Litwalk's here. I want to get one of his books. She's like, yeah, you just talked to him. I'm like, no, I wasn't. That's not Jimmy Litwalk. They're like, it's totally Jimmy Litwalk. And I'm like, no, it's not. I'm like, yes, it is. Like, Josh, who was Craig just talking to? He's like, Jimmy Litwalk. And I'm like, fuck all of y'all. Like, whoever. Like, fuck y'all, everyone. And they're like, Craig, it's totally Jimmy. I'm like, whatever, fuck off. And I remember getting up, and I was going to get some stencil paper. And I happened to walk by Jimmy's booth, and he had his banner up. And there he is, he's putting his books out, and I'm just sitting there staring at him. And I'm like, can I tell you something really weird, dude? And he's like, yeah, what's up? I was like, do you know all this time I've never known that you're Jimmy Litwalk? And I remember the offense, his face was just like, why would you even say that out loud? Like, what
exactly,
the fuck,
right? It's like, well, two of your best friends know it.
And so I remember just saying that. So that was me knowing Jimmy. That's as much as I knew Jimmy before doing the show.
Right.
So I remember the intimidation of walking on to the show after I got cast for it, because I really, all I had was watching the show.
Right.
That's all I knew about the show was season 1 and season 2. So you could like watch those shows over and over again and see the layout, but you just don't understand the inner workings of the show, like what goes into production and all that stuff, which makes everything about filming a show like a fucking nightmare.
Which is exactly, that was where all of the nightmares and all the bullshit and
horrible.
all the aggravation
like
comes from.
They would probably not admit to it during season 3, but later on when I came back for season 6, they admitted to a lot of things that were going on.
Yeah.
Because like you just felt like you were going crazy.
Yeah.
Like there were times where you'd be tattooing and your power would stop.
Mysteriously shut off.
I was using traditional machines the first time,
Yeah.
and which was a disadvantage to the people who weren't using tattoo machines. If they were using pens, they had an easier setup with the cartridges and stuff. So if you were using a machine, they would literally, anytime there was a tattoo challenge, they would tell you, get ready for a tattoo tomorrow. And we were like, what are we tattooing? We can't tell you that. So be prepared. Which meant if I was getting prepared for a really large tattoo, I would have to set up like 7 tattoo machines.
Yeah.
So I would literally have to go down there, get 7 tubes, 7 needles.
Oh, so you had to set up
I would
already.
have to set up the whole thing. Like you would literally have to prepare for whatever. And then it would sometimes be like a little, like we were tattooing fingernails.
Yeah.
So I literally needed, whatever. It was
fucking silly.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
But whatever, I felt like the first time I did the show, I had way too many distractions. I hated my hair.
What the fuck was that about?
I mean, they have stylists, and I think, and this isn't what they said, but I would assume for marketing purposes that they wanted each one of us appealing to a different
have an
group
individual style
of people watching. Like they want the watcher to be able to relate to one of us.
Yeah.
And if whatever style, like they relate to the way we dress, or they relate to our style of tattooing, like we all had to have something totally different. So there would always be like 1 or 2 new school guys and 1 or 2 traditional guys, and that's kind of how it's set up. So me coming into that house, no one knowing who I was, and being a new school guy, within the first 2 episodes, like I definitely had a presence. Jimmy treated me respectfully. Joey Hamilton also was like really respectful, but like a lot of the other artists just became intimidated by like my abilities that they totally didn't give a shit about 2 days before.
Because they didn't know who you were.
But I think the other problem that I had with the show, they set up these storylines for each one of us without us knowing. So we have to go get a mental evaluation, which is literally their blueprint for knowing how to fuck with us.
Yeah.
Like they know some like really personal stuff through that evaluation. So I think during the first season, they had 3 separate storylines that they wanted me to do.
To run with.
But they have to do these storylines without you knowing that they're developing these storylines. So literally what they do, they talk to your canvases, and those canvases become tools to help you produce this character.
Yeah.
So mind you, if I don't know that this is fucking going on, it seems like there's a lot of weird shit going on because they're asking really weird personal questions. And then like while they're asking the questions, cameras start zooming in on you and a microphone comes in.
You're like, oh fuck, we're in a moment.
Yeah, and then I honestly, when I did the show the first time, after watching the show the first 2 seasons, I feel like definitely the first season, the couple of African American artists that they had on the show did not do really well on a show. And so I felt like I was bringing something to the table, but that's all I wanted on the table was my tattooing. I don't want my background.
You don't want personality.
I don't want my attitude being the reason why I'm being kept in this house base. I just wanted strictly tattooing. If I'm not good enough to be here, then I want to go home.
Well, let me ask you a question. How much of a letdown was it to realize that it's more about character than it is about... I'm not going to say it's not just about tattooing, obviously, because we've seen the last several seasons where great tattooers fucking won. It wasn't like earlier seasons where you could tell the character and the personality had just as much to play as the art.
I think the problem was I didn't realize that was necessary.
Okay, that makes sense.
I didn't realize that me having a character was important.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of things that I thought would be way more important. Like, there were times where me and the other cast members would be being filmed and we would literally talk about, like, subjects that would be, to me as a tattoo artist, really fucking interesting to hear.
And and the thing it gets you know the people that are watching would probably be just into it.
A lot of us had ideas. Yeah. You know, there were artists on the show that had scripts, like because they wanted to be the next found artist to have their own tattoo show. But like to me, I just felt like my story that I was willing to share was like my upbringing into tattooing, where I tattooed at and stuff like that. And so those are the things that we would start talking about machine building, like really important things within tattooing. And then production would come walking in like 5 minutes into like a really cool discussion and be like, yeah, can you guys shut the fuck up? Like, so yesterday you said that so-and-so doesn't belong here because they're not a good tattoo artist. Why don't you guys talk about that? And then the camera's rolling and the person you just talk shit about is literally just sitting there with like a little tear in their eye and you're just like, ah, fuck.
Yeah.
Like, did you say that? Like, kind of, not as eloquently as they put it. Like, yeah, but yeah, I guess I don't think you belong here. And then drama. And that's what they want. They want fucking drama.
And you know, I get that part of it, but it's also one of those situations where it's like, I think it's really underhanded. I would like to believe that the people that watch these shows are more into the art and maybe the story of the people getting tattooed than they are with the bullshit arguments and drama. Because then it just turns into fucking Bad Girls Club. You know what I mean? It's just like so lame.
But I'll say in their defense, like pre-InkMaster, I mean, I feel like new school tattooing was just in the fucking caves at that point. Yeah. When InkMaster came out. And I feel like, I mean, think of the new school artists that came out on season 1 and 2. Yeah. Those guys like went straight, like...
Yeah, kind of to the top of the heap.
They like, you just started seeing those guys like all over media and doing like great fucking tattoos. And so like, I feel like with InkMaster came this generation of clients that started understanding like, oh, like it's really weird, but maybe tattoo artists might specialize in something.
Yeah, they're not just like, you know, they only do
No, we're not just general tattoo artists. Like, I feel like that was the first time with InkMaster that you would have people coming into a studio and like ask, do you have somebody that specializes in? Like, I don't think I've ever heard that question before InkMaster.
Yeah, I think before what you used to get was people would, like during Miami Ink, you'd have people come in and they would just be like, yeah, I'm looking to do fine line black and gray. They wouldn't ask who did it. Right. They just assumed everybody in there could do it, and then they would just throw around words that they had no idea what they were talking about.
But they were just learning it from watching TV. But exactly. I'm saying, like, I mean, if you really think about how much just mysterious our industry was, which I understand.
That was part of the allure.
That's who Cap was.
Yeah.
Cap hated the direction that he saw tattooing going. Like I remember like very clearly, like he had a lot of concern for the amount of artists that were learning how to tattoo. He had a lot of concern for the knowledge of tattooing that was being passed around. He was having a lot of concern about the talk of cost of tattooing. Like potentially how much tattoo artists could make.
Yeah.
Because to Cap,
you can't help but see it turning that direction.
But I'm just saying, but Cap didn't feel like anybody should even understand the potential of our business.
Yeah.
The minute the government understands how much money this industry brings in, guess what? Like here comes regulations, here comes government testing, and
here comes
like,
corporations.
how can we
here
get a
comes,
little bit of this money?
Yeah.
Like, but it was the TV shows that showed the government.
Yeah.
How much? Miami Ink specifically,
Yeah,
because that was like one of the first shows that they would like say out loud how much the tattoo cost.
Yeah, it definitely pulled the covers back on the entire show.
No, but I remember Cap, like, I mean, I really don't think that Cap was generally happy about me being on the show, but I think that that was one of the things that kept my attitude of being so quiet on the show, because I didn't want guys like Cap possibly seeing me on the show fucking selling out.
I mean, I get it, because that's exactly how he's going to look at it. He's going to look at it as
that's how I felt that he would look at it if I did that. So that's who I became, was this quiet fucking person on the show. And I didn't talk. I didn't get into the drama. I didn't do any of that, which wasn't what the show wanted. And so the minute they saw that I was not cooperative,
they just bounced.
I understood that I had no place on that show. Like I felt like I couldn't get a good canvas. The canvases got way more
I think
argumentative.
That's kind of what bothers me, is like, I think they were quick to stack the deck. That's the bummer of it.
I mean, being a tattoo artist, coming from the generation of tattooing that I learned, I mean, there was some kind of fear of going into a tattoo studio. Like, this intimidation of how like people talk to you very cautiously and asked you to do a tattoo very cautiously. Like, would you be willing to do this on me? Like, please, if you don't want to, just smack me and I'll fucking leave and be quiet. And now, like, you know, this it's not that anymore. Yeah. There's no intimidation walking in.
Oh no, now people,
tattoo artists
they walk all over.
They look like the clients.
Yeah.
Like, tattoo artists have full families.
Yeah.
They have a mother and father that raised them. They went to college, you know, like this isn't the tattoo generation that I came into.
Definitely not.
I feel like I came into tattooing because I used to get in a lot of trouble. And I'm not a person that lives in regret, but I wouldn't want to be in a career where I would have to lie about who I am just to be able to exist in that career. And so tattooing, I feel like, was one of the only options where majority of the people in this industry came from the same fucking background. So we like shared that. Like when you met another artist, it was like, oh, you came from one of those broken families too. Like, oh, your dad wasn't around when you were growing up. Like, that's fucking nuts. Oh, you went to jail? Like, holy shit. Like, yeah, like we're brothers now. Like, we're cool.
It is weird, man. Like, you wonder what artists of today are actually bonding over, because it ain't.
No, it's not that, but that was what we bonded over. Like, we all came from this fucked up past.
Yeah.
And this was the career. I mean, I think, to me, like, the minute that I became interested in tattooing, like, I remember grunge music coming in, and, you know, MTV latching onto that, and then music videos, and then you were starting to see musicians with tattoos, which I feel like people in my age group, I'm 53 now, so this is going back to when I turned 21 and got my first tattoo. There were a lot of younger people getting tattoos that were visible in the open. Excuse me. So I remember with the emergence of like grunge music, I saw this subculture developing with piercing.
Right.
You saw people with stretch earlobes, and you started seeing a lot more tattoo artists, and it was like this weird group of coolness, but there was no doors to get inside the fucking building.
Yeah.
It was just like, how can I be a part of this? And tattooing was the doorway for me to get into that. Yeah. So just going in and getting my first tattoo, I remember like walking out and having like this visible tattoo on my arm, and then I'd go to the mall and be like, and then somebody would walk by on this side, and then I'd have to like stop and pose like, hey, look, I got a fucking tattoo. But I remember just wanting to be a part of whatever this is. Like it wasn't for money. I didn't get into tattooing to make money.
Yeah.
Money wasn't the attractive thing of this industry back then. Yeah. It definitely didn't.
I don't think it existed.
I don't think you saw someone that thought like, oh my God, that guy's making so much money in this industry. I want to do that. Like, well, that's what people see now.
Oh yeah.
But I don't think that was what we saw back then.
Yeah.
We just saw people being lawless, people not having to like dress up to go to work, people just wearing what they normally wore to work.
I think what we saw were a bunch of individuals. We saw individuals that stood out on their own, that they may have all wore jeans or rode motorcycles or whatever, but the fact of the matter is everybody had kind of their own personality.
They were intimidating.
Yeah.
Dude, like I remember even working with Dino and Psycho, like there were nights that we would all have like a movie night and all the guys would all fucking get together and go, like I remember it was when I worked at Psycho, it was a whole group, it was probably like 9 of us. And it was a hood theater in Atlanta, Parkway Point in Cobb County. And it was the known crowd participation theater.
Oh shit.
Like if you wanted to see a movie that you wanted to be quiet, don't fucking see it there because it's like the hood crowd and they're gonna be throwing things and talking to the screen. And we went to see, not Psycho, but American Psycho.
Oh, okay.
We went to see American Psycho. So it was like a really big fucking movie. No one knew much about it. I mean, it was like kind of opening night. And there was this group behind our group. Like we had the whole row was like all tattoo artists, but it was like dark already.
Yeah. And
there were these fucking dudes behind us and they were just carrying on a conversation like they were just at a bar talking. And the credits started rolling and the movie started and they're just like, don't give a fuck about anybody watching the movie. They're just like, yeah, man, what yesterday? It's like full voice.
Yeah.
And we're all like sitting there. I know the whole movie theater's thinking the same thing. And I remember one of the guys that worked with us, his name was Ivan. And Ivan just stands up, turns around and says, will you just shut the fuck up? Screams at him. The whole movie theater starts round of applause.
Oh shit.
And the guys get really fucking quiet. He just sits down, starts watching the movie. And I remember just sitting here just thinking like, and I could hear the guys, like they were quiet for like maybe like 3 minutes straight. And then I hear one of the guys whisper to one of the other guys, who the fuck was he talking to? And then the other guy in a little voice said, you weren't talking to me. I'm damn sure wasn't fucking talking to me. I'm fucking slamming. And they're just like literally plotting on Ivan the whole fucking movie. Like I could hear them behind me plotting on him. Like we're gonna fuck him up. Fuck this motherfucker. But they're whispering. They're totally being kind now. Like they're being respectful. So I remember the movie ends, and I know we're about to get in some shit in the parking lot. So I remember I'm like right on the end, like fucking thing. So as soon as the movie credits start rolling, I stand up, go to the back so I can like watch what's gonna happen. These guys literally get up, the guys that were behind us talking, there's probably about 5 of them. They get up and they literally stand right where I'm standing. So I'm literally standing with this group.
Right.
And they're pointing out, like, it's that group right there, right there. And I'm like standing next to them, listening to them plot on the group that I'm with. So I'm literally like sitting here just like, fuck.
Just waiting for this shit to go
out. So we're about to have a fight, like no matter what. So I'm literally just sitting here like adjusting, like looking at like where's the exits at, like we're gonna get in a fight. And I remember Ivan comes like walking by me and he walks right past me. And then the guy beside me that's with this group is like, listen. Yeah, follow him. So they like walk outside. So I like literally get with this group. Like I'm an inside man now and I'm like following with them and I walk with them. Ivan goes into the bathroom, then everybody that works with me goes into the bathroom too, but they never put 2 and 2 that whole
they
group.
Were all together.
And it was dark, so they couldn't see this whole group either. So Ivan comes, like I'm standing with the group thinking like, which guy am I gonna hit first? Like just plotting out because I know my group doesn't even know that I'm already putting this whole thing together. And I'm just like watching, Ivan comes out, they're like, there he is, get him. Like as soon as he comes out, 2 people come with him and they're like with him, but all you see is just tattoos. It's like a bunch of crazy looking white dudes just come like walking out of the bathroom and they're all together. And then the guy's like, there he is, he's like, hold on, wait. And I remember they were just sitting there just like, look at these motherfuckers right here. These motherfuckers look crazy. But that's what attracted me to tattooing. Like it was just, you just had this presence. And people were intimidated by you. And it's not like I wasn't something to be intimidated, but it was cool to have something that gave people a warning to just not fuck with you.
Exactly.
And I think that that's what attracted me to tattooing. It wasn't money. It wasn't anything. It was like this image of lawlessness that I've always been attracted to. Like I've never been a rule follower. I've always been a rule breaker. And it was literally like, oh, there's a career around rule breaking. Like, oh my God, like these guys are
I can
like,
make money being
this is what I want to fucking do. Like if people come in, you can be rude to them and get the fuck out of here. And then they just like walk out and no one tells on you, like nothing. Like, holy shit, this is where I fucking belong. And now, you know, if we are lucky enough to adjust with this industry where it is now, like that's the difficulty, because you're literally not.
We're not those
what
people
we
anymore.
were.
Yeah. Now
we're making ourselves more tolerable.
We're more in line with baristas than we are with.
I'm saying though, like that's literally what you have to do to be relevant, because you're competing with. I mean, honestly, like want to go back to 1995 when I started tattooing. Like, how many female tattoo artists was I aware of? How many African American tattoo artists? I mean, there were some.
Yeah.
But you knew exactly who they were because there was such a small group.
Oh yeah, you can name them all pretty much.
Carrie Barber, like all these great women in tattooing, but they were very scattered out throughout the United States. And so, tattooing was this white male dominated
most certainly.
fucking industry.
Yep.
And a lot of us, you know, trying to be relevant during, I still remember working during my first couple of years of tattooing. Like if your reputation preceded you, a lot of times people didn't even know who you were. Like they were just referred like, oh, there's a guy named Craig at Cyclo Tattoo. Like he's really fucking good. And then off that recommendation, they never learned that I was black. And so like there was a look that was very clear. Someone had an appointment with me and I come walking out and they'd be like, hi. And I'd be like, how you doing? I'm Craig. Hi, nice to meet you. What's up? And they're like, I was like, it's okay. And they'd be like, no. I was like, no, it's cool. It's whatever, dude. It's like, you want a tattoo, right? And they're like, no, I'm not like, no. I'm
not like that.
Nah, I knew a black guy growing up. Like, yeah. And so it's just, you would get that with everyone. But I think as horrible as that is, it was what made me a better tattoo artist.
Right.
Because I felt this pressure that I owed this person more of a tattoo than they would get from this guy.
Right.
Because they didn't trust that I would be able to tattoo, because visually I didn't look like a tattoo artist to them.
That's a pretty interesting perspective. I would have never. It's not something I don't think I would have thought to ask.
My bad. I really feel like that's kind of why I got really good, and then of course put on top of that working with people who were established tattoo artists.
Tattooers, yeah.
I mean, I remember meeting Jack Rudy for the first time. I was at the Atlanta convention with Dino, and so Dino was like that guy coming up, and so a lot of times people would see Dino and like, oh, here's a guy working with Dino. I wonder what kind of work he's doing. So they would literally come up and just want to see what I was doing just because I worked with Dino. And so I'm doing this black and gray back piece on a guy. I can't remember what the image came from, but it was some something from Panama. It was a design that was like a fist, and the fist turned into a sword, and then the fist had two thumbs on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like basically, how this thumb went here, there was another thumb on this side. So it was like a two-thumbed fist.
Okay.
Like this. And then a sword. And I was doing this on this guy's whole like fucking back.
Oh shit.
And so I'm like sitting here tattooing, just totally enjoying myself. And then Jack Rudy is like walking by, and then he like stops. And he like backs up, and I see him looking at the banner, and he sees Dina. And I see him look at my banner, and he like looks at me, he makes eye contact, and I'm like literally sitting here just like kind of hiding behind my guy. You know, this is Jack Rudy. This is the person you've only seen in magazines.
And he was also a very impressive. And,
he had a presence.
Yeah.
He's a very intimidating guy. This is going back to like '96.
Yeah.
So he was like the
He was kind of jacked up,
hammered up. Like I've only heard stories of him. Like I remember there were stories about be careful if you have bootleg fucking versions of his Flash.
That was a fucking thing.
Because they said that he would like fucking personally show up and fucking remove that shit.
If he walked into your shop and it wasn't hand signed in pencil.
Well, he would sign his Flash to whoever he sold it to.
Yeah.
I had made the mistake of splitting Flash with another guy. Like we literally, like we buy it, we'll make copies. I didn't know that Jack did that, so of course I get my copy and it like literally says to the other guy.
Yeah.
Which became your death sentence if you like hung that shit.
Yeah, if he came into your shop.
Yeah,
exactly.
well, you don't know where Jack Rudy is at any time. He's like the
not to mention
boogeyman.
the fact you don't know the people that know him too.
He was a boogeyman back then. You just show up underneath your bed and be like, "You got some Flash on your fucking shit." So he like comes into the booth and walks around behind me, and I remember him just leaning in on my shoulder so hard that I could feel
almost feel him breathing.
The warmth from his body, like he was so close, like looking intimately at what I'm tattooing, and I'm like fucking freaking out. So I'm just going through the motions, just like I'm just gonna look like I'm know what the fuck I'm doing, which I don't. Like I'm just sitting here shading, and I remember him just saying, "You know, you put 2 thumbs on that," and I'm like, "Yeah, I did." He's like, "Huh." He just walks away.
And just walked away.
Never talked to him ever again. Like he just like walked away. And then I remember the guy that I'm tattooing, I guess he could sense like maybe I stopped breathing or something.
Yeah, right.
He's like,
"You okay?"
"Who was that?" And I said, "That was fucking Jack Rudy." And he's like, "Who's he?" I was like, "He's somebody." I was like, he just fucking came in here and looked at what I was doing. And I was like, he's like, "Is that good?" I'm like, "I think so." I was like, "Yeah." Like, yeah.
He didn't tell me to stop.
Yeah, he fucking liked what I was doing. So I just remember those days of tattooing. Like, I think a lot of us now are reminiscing.
Oh, I think there's more reminiscing today than there ever has been.
I literally spend more time at conventions reminiscing about older conventions.
It's a lot of that.
I still reminisce about the European conventions.
Yep.
Just how different they are than the conventions here, where I feel like right now with the United States, I feel like it's like everybody is racing to have a convention.
It's entirely too much. It's like anything
But then
else.
you go to Europe and they're spaced out.
They are spaced out, but they're getting crazy there now too, I think.
Really?
I think it's getting crazy there now too. It's just too much. I mean, it's like anything else in this. We're gluttons, and unfortunately, I think it's getting to the point where we can't keep forcing it down. Something's gonna have to give. Like I said, with what's happening now politically and whatnot, it's gonna be interesting to see how tattooing kind of fares and how it changes the landscape of what we deal with on a daily basis.
So is that a discussion that we're gonna?
No, because I think we left off on a really good story. We also left off before that. I was like, oh, this is going to be a good place to end. But then he went on to that other story, and I'm like, all right, well, I do have to call it because we have been talking for a bit, and I don't want to keep you too.
Right,
so
I appreciate.
But
it.
I do really appreciate you sitting. Is there anything else you do want to just say or anything? Like,
No.
I'm going to have all the information for you, for the shop, in the description and everything. So make sure you look.
I'm still a tattoo artist. I still travel. I'm very specific about when and where I travel. I feel like, I'm 53 and I've been tattooing. This month marks my 30th year anniversary of tattooing. I still enjoy it, but I really enjoy my comfort tattooing.
Yeah.
So going to conventions, it questions that. Like if I can drive to a convention, I feel like that eases my ability to be comfortable at a convention because I can bring the things
that make you comfortable.
I just don't like going to conventions and relying on other people to help me be comfortable.
Yeah.
So I only go to conventions I can drive to now. But other than that, you can find me here in Carrollton. I'm here every day. I enjoy my family time, but I still enjoy tattooing just as much as day one.
And it's a beautiful shop. I made the comment, as weird as it sounds, that it was one of the first shops that I've walked into that smelt like a tattoo shop. And if you're a tattooer, you know what I'm fucking talking about. Especially if you came up in the '90s. That weird. It was like incense and soap and
bleach. And
it's just
pine
weird.
sol.
As weird as it is, it does have its own. It's got its own bouquet, man. It's weird.
It's the perfect mixture of all that stuff together. And when you walk in, I mean, it's how I grew up tattooing. It's definitely. I mean, it's not a traditional tattoo studio by all means. I remember my first tattoo studio. We still utilize Flash, which I mean, as long as I've been tattooing, I can't think of the amount of Flash that I've tattooed in the last 10 years of tattooing. I could probably still count on my fingers. Like, it's just not a thing anymore. So I know when I set up the studio, it was just more art. Like, I just wanted to hang up art.
Well, you have a huge, fucking beautiful collection of stuff.
Thank you very much. And so that's just this is what works for me. This is what I'm comfortable with, and I have a guy that works with me that enjoys it here, and it's just laid back, enjoy what I do every day kind of situation. That's what I've made for myself here in Carrollton.
Nice. Well, again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me.
Hey, everybody, thank you very much for joining. I'm going to ask, please like and subscribe, spread the word, let everybody know that this was a great fucking interview. Had a really wonderful time, and looking forward to having dinner.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Moving on. Thank you very much. You guys enjoy. See you when I see you.
So how